Biggest barrier to healthy eating isn't necessarily a time crunch during the week. It's not even physical energy. For me, it's really the mental load and decision fatigue that comes with trying to think about what I want to eat. That's why I love taking a few hours on Sunday just to prep a few dishes so I really don't have to think about meals during the week. Also means that I can spend more time resting and relaxing instead of cooking. So here's everything I prepped on Sunday in just a few hours to lower my mental and physical stress for the week. So if you guys watched my last video, you know that I switched back to working out first thing in the morning, but I always like to have a little snack before I work out. So I've been loving making these breakfast cookies. I added a little bit too much pumpkin puree because I was just finishing what I had in the fridge, but I would definitely stick to the 3/4 cup. And then I added some tahini, a little bit of maple syrup, salt, vanilla, and a little bit of pumpkin pie spice. And then I've been loving this protein powder. It is a beef isolate, so it's dairy free, but it's also not a plant-based protein. And I find it just digests a little bit better and I like the taste. I also added some collagen just because I had it on hand, and then rolled oats, hemp seeds. You can really add in whatever extra add-ins you want. You can use nuts, seeds, whatever you'd like. And then I just bake it at 350 for about 10 to 12 minutes. And these are perfect in the morning just to keep me going until I can come home and have a full breakfast. Speaking of my breakfast, you guys know I love having the same breakfast every morning. It just cuts down on decision fatigue. I know that it will keep me full until lunch, and you guys always ask how I make my jammy eggs. So I always use extra large eggs, and I just boil them for 8 minutes and then right into ice water. And they come out perfect and jammy every time. And then you guys are always asking me for more high protein vegetarian meals. So I wanted to share this tofu roasted vegetable and farro salad. Now there are a lot of components of this salad, but I will say once you have it all prepped, it makes 3 to 4 servings, and you could always double or triple the recipe if you wanted even more servings. So I started by marinating my tofu. This is my favorite way to marinate tofu or tempeh. I do a pack of tofu, 1 to 2 tablespoons of tamari, and then a little bit of maple syrup and garlic powder. If you wanted to keep it completely sugar-free, you could always leave the maple syrup out. And then while that was marinating, I got started on my roasted veggies. You guys know delicata squash is probably my favorite winter vegetable, so I chopped up some of that along with some shallots just to add a little bit more flavor. I also love including allium vegetables in my diet. They are such a great natural antimicrobial and great for feeding the gut bacteria. And then I also cut up a beetroot. I've been loving incorporating more beetroot into my diet. It's packed with antioxidants and it's amazing for blood flow. And I just seasoned those with a little bit of avocado oil, salt, and then roasted them in the oven at about 400 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes. I just took them out when they were tender, and then by the time I took them out, my tofu had been marinating for about 30 minutes. So I just threw that in the oven also at 400 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes. I just keep an eye on it and pull it out when it is golden brown. And then I did want a hearty whole grain to go with this salad, so I decided to use farro. You could always swap this out for a gluten-free grain if you wanted to make this fully gluten-free, but I just gave that a rinse, cooked it in water for about 40 minutes, and then while my farro was cooking, I made up this maple mustard dressing. This is very similar to my maple mustard tahini dressing. I just swapped tahini for olive oil, so I added olive oil, apple cider vinegar, mustard, maple syrup, salt, pepper, garlic powder. You could honestly make a giant batch of this dressing and just have it on hand for salads. It is so delicious. And then in the winter, I really try and focus on cooked vegetables. So I don't like to have a salad that's full of raw greens. I love using kale. It is a seasonal vegetable and I love it cooked. So I just sauteed some of that. I sauteed about half of that bunch and then I just stuck the other half in the freezer. And I just added everything to a bowl. So I ended up rinsing my farro, adding in the root vegetable along with the tofu, and then dressing it all with the dressing. And this was such a great meal prep lunch to have on hand. I didn't even have to think about making lunch for the whole week. And you can serve this warm, you can serve it cold. You have tons of protein from the tofu, lots and lots of fiber from the root vegetables and the farro, lots of minerals from the tofu, the farro, the veggies, and lots of antioxidants from the beetroot, the kale, and the extra virgin olive oil. If you wanted to add a little bit more crunch, you could definitely do some walnuts, pecans, or pumpkin seeds. And then you guys saw me make a version of this nourishing rice in my last What I Ate in a Week. I've honestly meal prepped this 3 weeks in a row. It is so delicious, so versatile. You can really use whatever veggies you have on hand. You can swap out the chicken for other protein. You can make it vegetarian if you use vegetable stock and tofu or tempeh. But I specifically love this version because you have so much amazing prebiotic fiber, especially from the onion and the celery. That is like fuel for your gut. And then I also added in a few carrots and parsnips and just let that cook down. And then I added some fresh ginger. It is one of my favorite herbs to add in the fall and winter. Such a great warming herb, and it has so many medicinal properties. And then I add a ton of garlic. I usually do 4 to 6 cloves. And then I always love to add a ton of warming spices. I don't measure, I just eyeball everything, but I added some turmeric, oregano, cumin, salt, pepper, and cinnamon. I especially love using the cinnamon and turmeric. They are both such great warming spices. They're great for fall and winter and full of polyphenols. And then I just added in some rice and lentils that I had soaked overnight and then rinsed. I love adding in the lentils just to add a little bit more protein and fiber to the dish. And the day before, I had made a giant batch of my bone broth. I will link an Instagram reel where I show the recipe for this bone broth, but I added in a few cups of that. And then I had a cup of frozen coconut milk. Whenever I have leftover coconut milk, I just freeze it in these little individual portions. And then once the liquid came to a boil, I added in 3 large chicken thighs. You can also do chicken breasts, but I always prefer chicken thighs. And I just let that cook for about 20 to 30 minutes, just until the chicken thighs are cooked through and the lentils and rice have had enough time to absorb all the liquid. The amazing thing about this recipe is you can always add more or less liquid depending on how thick you want it. If you want it more of a soup texture, you just add more liquid. You can really let it cook for as long as you want. The rice will just become more and more mushy. I took out the chicken and gave it a good shred and then added it back to the pot. I also had a bunch of fresh parsley that I had chopped up and stored in my freezer. I find I can never go through a whole bunch of parsley on my own, so I just like to keep some in the freezer, and then I can always add it to soups and stew. I've been having this on repeat for dinner. But that does bring us to the end of the video. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got some meal ideas or inspiration. As always, let me know in the comments what you guys want to see more of, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!